Emma's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., pulling her from the thin veil of sleep. She reached over to silence it, rubbing her eyes as she sat up in her modest one-bedroom apartment. The walls, adorned with a few family photos and inexpensive art pieces, were a testament to her simple yet cozy life. Emma, at 28, had been working as a waitress at Chili's in downtown Chicago for the past 5 years. It wasn't the career she had dreamt of, but it paid the bills, or at least most of them. She slipped into her uniform, a simple black shirt and trousers, and tied her hair back into a practical ponytail. Chicago was waking up as Emma made her way to the bus stop. The city, with its towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, was both a source of inspiration and intimidation. The bus ride was her brief moment of respite, a time to mentally prepare for the day ahead. She often glanced out the window, watching the cityscape blur by, her mind wandering to the myriad of tasks awaiting her. Upon arriving at Chili's, Emma was greeted by the familiar cacophony of clattering dishes, sizzling food, and the hum of conversations. "Morning, Emma," called out Jake, the cook, as she walked into the kitchen. "Got a fresh batch of coffee if you need it." "Thanks, Jake. I could use a cup," she replied, offering a grateful smile. It was these small acts of kindness that made the grind bearable. Throughout the day, Emma interacted with a variety of customers. There was the elderly couple who came in every Wednesday for their usual order of burgers and fries, the group of college students sharing laughter over nachos, and the solitary businessman lost in his thoughts over a cup of coffee. Emma treated each with the same warmth and respect, making sure their experience was pleasant. Her shifts were long, often stretching into the late hours of the night. The physical toll was evident in the aching of her feet and the weariness that settled into her bones. But it was the emotional strain that weighed heaviest. Emma's heart went out to the less fortunate, the ones who had slipped through society's cracks. It was not uncommon for her to slip an extra piece of bread or a cup of soup to a homeless person lingering near the restaurant's entrance. "You're too soft, Emma," her co-worker Lisa would sometimes chide. "You can't save everyone." "I know," Emma would reply with a soft sigh, "but if I can help just one person, isn't it worth it?" Her modest apartment was a sanctuary from the chaos of her job. After her shifts, Emma would return home, kick off her shoes, and sink into the worn-out couch. She often spent her evenings reading or sketching, simple pleasures that offered a brief escape from reality. On the weekends, she volunteered at a local shelter, serving meals and offering a listening ear to those in need. It was her way of giving back, of finding meaning in a world that often seemed indifferent. As the sun set over Chicago, casting long shadows across the city, Emma prepared for another day. The wind howled through the streets of Chicago, biting through layers of clothing with its icy grip. Emma shivered as she stepped out of the warm interior of Chili's for a moment of respite. The cold was relentless tonight, more so than usual, and the city seemed to be wrapped in a layer of frosty desolation. She drew her coat tighter around her and glanced towards the entrance. That was when she saw him, an elderly man, huddled against the wall, his thin frame shivering beneath ragged layers of clothing. His face was weathered, etched with the lines of countless hardships, and his eyes, half closed, spoke of a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. Emma hesitated for a moment, the warmth of the restaurant calling her back, but she couldn't ignore the pang of compassion that welled up within her. She approached him slowly, not wanting to startle him. "Excuse me, sir," she said gently. "Are you all right?" The man looked up, his eyes struggling to focus. "I'm just very cold," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Emma knelt down to his level, her heart aching at the sight of his frailty. "What's your name?" she asked. "George," he replied after a pause. "George Walker." "Well, George," Emma said, offering him a warm smile, "would you like something to eat? It's awfully cold out here." George's eyes widened slightly, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. "I don't have any money," he admitted, shame coloring his words. "That's all right," Emma reassured him. "I'll take care of it. Come on inside where it's warm." She helped George to his feet, noticing how light he was, almost like a feather. Inside the restaurant, the warmth was a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. Emma found a quiet corner for George to sit and quickly fetched a steaming bowl of soup and a sandwich from the kitchen. She paid for the meal out of her own pocket, a small sacrifice for the sake of kindness. "Here you go, George," she said, placing the food in front of him. "Eat up." George looked at the food, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for the spoon. "Thank you," he whispered, tears welling up in his eyes. "Thank you so much." Emma watched as George ate, the color slowly returning to his cheeks. She could see the gratitude in his every movement, the way he savored each bite as if it were a feast. It wasn't just about the food, it was the kindness that came with it, a rarity in his world of constant struggle. As George finished his meal, he looked up at Emma, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You don't know what this means to me," he said, his voice steadier now. "It's been days since I had a decent meal." Emma smiled softly. "I'm glad I could help," she said. "Everyone deserves a little kindness." They talked for a while longer, Emma learning about George's life, the family he had lost, and the series of unfortunate events that had led him to the streets. His story was a sobering reminder of how quickly life could change, and it deepened Emma's resolve to help where she could. Before she returned to her duties, Emma slipped a few more bills into George's hand. "This should help you get through the next few days," she said. "And if you need anything, come back here. I'm usually around." George looked at the money, his eyes filling with tears once more. "You're an angel," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you, Emma. I won't forget this." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. "Take care of yourself, George," she said softly. "Stay safe." As she walked back to her station, Emma couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment. The world was harsh and unforgiving, but small acts of kindness could make a difference, even if just for one person. The night wore on, the restaurant bustling with its usual rhythm, but Emma felt a warmth that went beyond the physical. She had made a difference, however small, and that was enough. The cold outside seemed a little less biting, the city a little less lonely. The next morning, Emma's alarm buzzed as usual, but something felt off. She had a nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach, a sense that today would be different. Arriving at Chili's, Emma went through her routine, greeting colleagues and preparing for the breakfast rush. It wasn't long before the manager, Mr. Smith, called her into his office. His tone was curt, and Emma's heart sank as she followed him. "Emma, sit down," Mr. Smith said, his expression unreadable. Emma took a seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "What's this about, Mr. Smith?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Mr. Smith leaned back in his chair, regarding her with a stern look. "Emma, I've received several complaints about an incident last night. You served a homeless man inside the restaurant and even paid for his meal. Is that correct?" Emma nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. He was cold and hungry, and I thought it was the right thing to do. I paid for his meal out of my own pocket." Mr. Smith's eyes narrowed. Regardless of your intentions, it's against company policy to serve non-paying customers, especially those who might make our paying customers uncomfortable. Several patrons complained about the smell and felt unsafe. Emma's stomach churned. But Mr. Smith, I was just trying to help. He didn't cause any trouble, and I made sure he was taken care of quietly. Mr. Smith shook his head. That's not the point, Emma. We have rules for a reason. We can't risk losing customers over something like this. I'm afraid I have no choice but to let you go. The words hit Emma like a physical blow. You're firing me? Over this? Mr. Smith's face was impassive. I'm sorry, Emma. You've been a good employee, but we can't make exceptions. You can collect your things and leave at the end of your shift. Emma sat there, stunned, trying to process what she had just heard. Mr. Smith, I need this job. I can't afford to lose it. Please, reconsider. Mr. Smith stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. My decision is final, Emma. I wish you the best of luck. Emma left the office, her mind in a daze. She completed her shift in a fog, mechanically taking orders and serving food, her usual warmth and smile replaced by numbness. As the hours dragged on, the reality of her situation began to sink in. She had no savings to fall back on, and the bills were piling up. By the time her shift ended, Emma felt like she was on the verge of tears. She gathered her belongings and said a quiet goodbye to her colleagues, who looked on with a mix of sympathy and confusion. She didn't have the heart to explain. Stepping out into the cold evening air, Emma felt the weight of her predicament settle heavily on her shoulders. She walked aimlessly for a while, the city's lights blurring as she blinked back tears. The streets were bustling with people going about their lives, oblivious to her silent despair. Emma found herself at a small park, the trees bare and the benches covered in a thin layer of frost. She sat down, pulling her coat tighter around her, and let the tears fall. Her mind raced with worry about her future. How would she pay the rent? What would she do for work? The uncertainty was overwhelming. For a long time, Emma sat there, lost in thought. The image of George's grateful face kept coming back to her. She didn't regret helping him, but she couldn't help but wonder if it had been worth the cost. As the night grew colder, Emma finally stood up and started walking home. She knew she had to face her new reality, no matter how daunting it seemed. Emma returned to her small apartment, feeling the heavy weight of the day pressing down on her shoulders. She placed her keys on the kitchen counter and sank into the worn-out couch, exhaustion creeping into her bones. The events at work had left her emotionally drained, and all she wanted was a moment of peace. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. She glanced at the screen and saw an unfamiliar number. With a hesitant sigh, she answered. "Hello, this is Emma," she said, trying to mask her fatigue. "Ms. Emma?" a somber voice responded. "This is Dr. Collins from Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about your father, John." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, doctor, what happened? Is he all right?" There was a pause on the other end, followed by a deep breath. "I'm afraid your father has been diagnosed with severe pneumonia. His condition is critical, and he's currently in the ICU. We're doing everything we can, but he's very weak." Emma felt the room spin around her. "No, that can't be," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "He was fine the last time I spoke to him." "Pneumonia can develop quickly, especially in the elderly," Dr. Collins explained gently. "It's crucial that you come to the hospital as soon as possible." The phone slipped from Emma's grasp, landing with a dull thud on the floor. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The weight of losing her job had been overwhelming, but this news shattered her completely. Her father was the only family she had left, and the thought of losing him was unbearable. After what felt like an eternity, Emma wiped her tears and picked up the phone. She needed to be strong, for her father's sake. Taking a deep breath, she called the hospital back and spoke to Dr. Collins, arranging to leave for her hometown immediately. Emma packed a small suitcase with essentials, her hands trembling with anxiety. She couldn't afford a plane ticket, so she booked a bus ride that would take her through the night. As she waited for the bus, she tried to focus on the journey ahead, but her mind kept drifting back to her father's frail figure in a hospital bed. The bus ride was long and filled with the quiet hum of the engine. Emma stared out the window, watching the city lights fade into the darkness. Memories of her childhood flooded her mind, days spent playing in the park with her father, his laughter as he pushed her on the swing, the warmth of his embrace on cold winter nights. She clung to these memories, hoping they would give her strength. When Emma finally arrived at the hospital, it was early morning. The sterile smell of disinfectant greeted her as she walked through the doors, her heart pounding in her chest. She approached the reception desk, where a kind-faced nurse guided her to the ICU. Dr. Collins met her outside the room, his expression serious but compassionate. "Ms. Emma, your father is very weak. We've stabilized him for now, but his condition is still critical. He's been asking for you." Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She entered the room and saw her father lying on the bed, his breathing labored, tubes and machines surrounding him. She rushed to his side, taking his hand in hers. "Dad, I'm here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. John's eyes fluttered open, and a weak smile appeared on his lips. "Emma, my girl," he rasped. "You came." "Of course I did," she replied, her voice trembling. "I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." They spent the next few hours talking quietly, Emma recounting happier times and sharing stories of her recent life. As the day wore on, Emma made a decision. She couldn't stay in the city while her father was fighting for his life. She needed to be here to support him through his recovery. Emma's return to her hometown was both a relief and a new beginning, fraught with challenges. The familiar sights of the small town brought a bittersweet comfort. The streets she had walked as a child now seemed narrower, the houses smaller. Yet there was a certain solace in their familiarity. Her father's small house, nestled on a quiet street, awaited her care and presence. John was still weak, but had shown signs of improvement since her arrival. Emma took on the role of caretaker with determination, her days structured around his needs. Every morning she would help him with his medication, ensure he ate nutritious meals, and kept him comfortable. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but Emma bore it with a quiet strength. When John rested, Emma ventured out to find work. The local economy was struggling and jobs were scarce, but she was determined to contribute however she could. She took on various odd jobs, cleaning houses, running errands, and collecting recyclables to sell. It was grueling work, but it was necessary. One crisp morning, Emma knocked on the door of Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who lived a few streets over. The door creaked open, revealing a frail but spirited figure. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. I'm Emma John's daughter. I heard you might need some help around the house," Emma asked with a hopeful smile. Mrs. Thompson's eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh, Emma. Yes, of course. Come in, dear. I could use some help with the cleaning." Emma spent the next few hours scrubbing floors, dusting shelves, and doing the laundry. The work was physically demanding, but Mrs. Thompson's gratitude made it worthwhile. They shared stories over tea during a short break, the conversation flowing easily. Emma found solace in these small moments of connection. By the end of the day, Emma had earned a modest sum, enough to buy groceries for the week and save a bit for her father's medical bills. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Despite her efforts, the financial strain was relentless. Medical expenses piled up, and the cost of living left little room for anything beyond the essentials. Emma often found herself lying awake at night, worry gnawing at her. But giving up was not an option. One evening, after a long day of work, Emma returned home to find her father sitting in his favorite armchair, a worn book in his hands. He looked up and smiled, a gesture that warmed her heart despite her exhaustion. "Emma, you're doing too much," he said softly. "You need to rest." Emma shook her head and sat down beside him. "I'm doing what needs to be done, Dad. We'll get through this together." John reached out and took her hand, his grip weak but full of love. "I'm proud of you, Emma. Your mother would be too." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes, but she blinked them away. "Thanks, Dad. We'll make it. I promise." Days turned into weeks, and Emma's routine became a blend of caregiving and relentless work. She became a familiar face around town, known for her willingness to help and her unwavering spirit. Each job, no matter how small, was a step towards stability. One particularly cold afternoon, Emma was out collecting recyclables when she ran into Mr. Harris, the owner of the local hardware store. He had heard about her situation and offered her a part-time job at the store. "It's not much, Emma, but it's steady work," he said, his eyes kind. Emma accepted gratefully. The job provided some much-needed financial stability, and the regular hours allowed her to spend more time with her father. Despite the hardships, there were moments of joy and gratitude that punctuated Emma's days. The town rallied around them, offering support in ways both big and small. One evening, as she prepared for bed, Emma glanced at the calendar. Tomorrow was another day, another opportunity to build a life of hope and perseverance. And with that thought, she drifted off to sleep, ready to meet the dawn with unwavering resolve. Emma sat on the front porch, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard. The day's work had left her exhausted. Her thoughts drifted to the bills that still needed paying and the fragile health of her father inside the house. Life had become a series of hurdles, each one taller than the last. She was lost in thought when a sleek black car pulled up in front of the house. Emma watched curiously as two men stepped out. One was tall and well-dressed, exuding an air of confidence and authority. The other, slightly shorter and holding a briefcase, seemed to be his assistant. "Excuse me, miss," the taller man called out as they approached. "Are you Emma?" "Yes, I am," she replied cautiously, standing up. "Can I help you?" The man extended his hand. "My name is Sam Walker. This is my assistant, Daniel. May we have a moment of your time?" Emma shook his hand, a bit bewildered. "Of course. Please have a seat." She motioned to the porch chairs. Sam and Daniel sat down, and Emma noticed the serious expression on Sam's face. "I'm here because of something that happened a few weeks ago," Sam began. "You helped a homeless man named George outside a restaurant in Chicago." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, I remember. He seemed so frail and hungry. I just couldn't ignore him." Sam nodded. "George is my grandfather. He has been struggling with temporary memory loss and often wanders off. That night, he had left the house and we couldn't find him. We were frantic." Emma listened intently, her concern for George returning. "Is he all right?" she asked. "Thanks to you, he is," Sam said with a grateful smile. "When you gave him food and a place to rest, it gave him the strength to remember his way home. We found him the next morning, safe and sound." Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. "I'm glad I could help. He seemed like a kind man." "He is," Sam agreed, "and he hasn't stopped talking about you since. He told us how you went out of your way to help him, even though you didn't have to." It's rare to find such kindness. Emma blushed slightly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. It was nothing, really. I just did what anyone should do. Sam's expression turned serious again. Emma, we learned about your situation through restaurant. They mentioned that you lost your job because of what you did for my grandpa. Is that true? Emma looked down, nodding. Yes, it is. But it was worth it to help someone in need. Sam exchanged a glance with Daniel, who nodded. Tell me more about what happened after you lost your job, Sam asked, his tone earnest. Emma took a deep breath, the weight of the past few months pressing down on her. After I was fired, things got really tough. I had to leave Chicago and come back home to take care of my father. He's been sick with pneumonia, and the medical bills have been overwhelming. I've been doing odd jobs around town to make ends meet, but it's been a struggle. Sam listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each word. I'm sorry you've had to go through all this, Emma, especially when you did something so selfless. Emma shrugged slightly, trying to keep her emotions in check. I don't regret helping George. He needed it, and I was in a position to do something. Sam nodded, his eyes filled with a mix of admiration and sadness. You have a kind heart, Emma. It's rare to find someone who acts with such compassion without expecting anything in return. They sat in silence for a moment, the quiet of the evening wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Finally, Sam spoke again, his voice resolute. I want to help you, he said. You've done so much for my grandfather, and now it's our turn to support you. We'll cover all of your father's medical expenses. Emma's eyes widened in disbelief. Sam, that's incredibly generous, but I can't accept that. It's too much. It's the least we can do, Sam insisted. Your father needs proper care, and you shouldn't have to shoulder that burden alone. Besides, George would want this. He hasn't stopped talking about how grateful he is for your kindness. Emma felt a lump form in her throat, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. Thank you, Sam. This means more to me than I can express. There's more, Sam continued. I believe in investing in people who show true potential and heart. I want to offer you a scholarship to attend training in healthcare services. With your natural empathy and dedication, you would make an excellent healthcare worker. Emma was stunned. A scholarship? But I've never thought about a career in healthcare. Think about it, Sam encouraged. You have the qualities that make a great caregiver. We need people like you in our clinics, people who genuinely care about others. This isn't just about helping you, it's about giving you an opportunity to build a stable, fulfilling career. Emma sat back, absorbing his words. The idea of a new career path, especially one in healthcare, was both daunting and exciting. I don't know what to say, she finally managed. This is all so unexpected. Sam smiled warmly. You don't have to decide right now. Take your time to think it over. But know that the offer stands, and we'd be honored to have you as part of our team. Emma nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of hope that things could truly get better. Thank you, Sam. I'll definitely consider it. As the evening grew darker, Sam and Emma continued to talk, their conversation weaving through topics both serious and light-hearted. Emma felt a connection forming, not just through their shared concern for George, but through a mutual respect and understanding. When it was time for Sam and Daniel to leave, Emma stood by the porch, watching the sleek black car drive away. The night air was cool, and she hugged her arms around herself, feeling a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Back inside, she found her father dozing in his armchair, a book resting on his lap. She gently covered him with a blanket and sat beside him, her heart full. "Things are going to get better, Dad," she whispered. "I promise." Over the next few days, Emma thought a lot about Sam's offer. She discussed it with her father, who, despite his weakened state, showed a spark of excitement at the prospect of her pursuing a new career. "You've always been a caregiver, Emma," he said one evening. "This could be a wonderful opportunity for you. And it sounds like you'll be working with good people." Emma nodded, feeling more sure of her decision. The chance to make a difference in the lives of others, just as she had done for George, was a calling she couldn't ignore. The next time Sam visited, Emma had her answer. "I'll do it," she told him, her voice steady with resolve. "I want to take the scholarship and pursue a career in healthcare." Sam's face lit up with a broad smile. "That's wonderful news, Emma. You're going to do great things. Welcome to the team." Emma stood nervously outside the classroom door, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The building, with its modern architecture and clean lines, was a stark contrast to the quaint town she had left behind. She took a deep breath and stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was filled with rows of desks, each occupied by students who, like her, were embarking on a new journey in the field of healthcare. The instructor, a middle-aged woman with a kind smile, greeted Emma and handed her a syllabus. "Welcome, Emma," she said warmly. "We're glad to have you with us." Emma nodded, offering a tentative smile. "Thank you. I'm excited to be here." The first few days were overwhelming. The course material was dense, filled with medical terminology and procedures that were foreign to her. Emma spent long hours studying, often staying up late into the night to review her notes. The transition from odd jobs to structured learning was challenging, but she was determined to succeed. One evening, as she sat at her desk in the small apartment provided by the scholarship, she received a call from her father. "Hi, Dad," she answered, trying to sound upbeat despite her exhaustion. "How's it going, Emma?" John's voice was weak but filled with pride. "It's tough, but I'm managing," she replied honestly. "There's so much to learn." "I know you can do it," John said. "You've always been a quick learner. Just take it one step at a time." His words gave her the encouragement she needed. Emma threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor, attending every lecture and participating actively in class discussions. She quickly became known for her diligence and her empathetic approach to patient care, qualities that set her apart. In the clinical skills lab, Emma's hands trembled slightly as she practiced taking blood pressure readings and administering injections. The instructors were patient, guiding her through each step with precision. Emma's confidence grew with each passing day, her movements becoming more assured and her knowledge deepening. One afternoon, during a practical session, Emma was paired with a fellow student named Lily. They were tasked with performing a simulated patient assessment, a crucial skill in their training. "Hi, I'm Emma," she introduced herself, extending a hand. "Lily," the other student replied, shaking her hand firmly. "Let's do this." They worked together seamlessly, their rapport evident as they navigated the assessment. Emma's calm demeanor and clear instructions impressed both Lily and their instructor. "Well done, Emma," the instructor praised. "You have a natural aptitude for this." Emma beamed, the compliment bolstering her resolve. She knew she had found her calling. As the weeks turned into months, Emma's skills continued to improve. She developed a deep understanding of patient care, learning to balance empathy with professionalism. Her classmates often sought her help, and she gladly offered support, remembering the struggles she had faced at the beginning. Outside of class, Emma maintained a close relationship with her father. They spoke regularly, and his health gradually improved with the medical care he received, thanks to Sam's support. The knowledge that her father was on the mend gave Emma an added sense of purpose. One day, while reviewing her notes in the campus library, Emma received a text from Sam. He wanted to meet to discuss her progress and future plans. They met at a quiet cafe near the campus. Sam greeted her with a smile and a warm handshake. "Emma, I've been hearing great things about your progress," he said, sitting across from her. "Thank you, Sam. It's been a challenging journey, but I'm learning so much," Emma replied. "I'm proud of you," Sam said sincerely. "You've come a long way since we first met. How are you finding the course?" "It's incredible," Emma said, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I've discovered a passion for patient care that I never knew I had. I feel like I'm finally on the right path." Sam nodded, pleased. "That's wonderful to hear. There's a position ready for you at one of our clinics." Emma's heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you, Sam. That means a lot to me." "You've earned it," Sam said. "Your dedication and compassion are exactly what we need." As they parted ways, Emma felt a renewed sense of determination. She threw herself into her studies with even greater focus, knowing that her efforts would soon translate into a meaningful career. The support from Sam and her father, combined with her newfound passion, propelled her forward. By the end of the year, Emma had completed her training with top marks. Emma stood at the podium, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and disbelief. The auditorium was filled with fellow graduates, instructors, and proud families. She glanced down at the diploma in her hands, the culmination of months of hard work and determination. The dean of the nursing school had just announced her name as one of the top graduates, and the applause still echoed in her ears. "Congratulations, Emma," said Dr. Hayes, her favorite instructor, shaking her hand warmly. "You've earned this." "Thank you, Dr. Hayes," Emma replied, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. "I couldn't have done it without your support." As she walked back to her seat, she spotted her father, John, sitting in the front row, his face beaming with pride. Beside him sat Sam Walker and his grandfather George, who had become a cherished part of her journey. Emma's heart swelled with gratitude and love for these people who had supported her unconditionally. After the ceremony, Emma joined her family and friends outside. The autumn air was crisp and the leaves crunched underfoot as they mingled with other graduates and their families. John hugged her tightly, his eyes glistening with tears. "I'm so proud of you, Emma," he whispered. "Your mother would be too." "Thanks, Dad," Emma said, holding him close. "I couldn't have done it without you." Sam approached, a wide smile on his face. "Congratulations, Emma. You did it." Emma smiled back. "Thank you, Sam, and thank you for everything you've done for me and my dad." George stepped forward, his eyes twinkling with pride. "You've come a long way, Emma. We're lucky to have you in our lives." Emma felt a lump in her throat. "I'm the lucky one. You all believed in me when I needed it most." Later that evening, they celebrated at a cozy restaurant, toasting to Emma's achievements and the bright future ahead. The atmosphere was warm and filled with laughter, a stark contrast to the hardships Emma had faced over the past year. The following week, Emma began her new job at one of Sam's clinics. The building was modern and welcoming, a place designed to make patients feel cared for. Emma felt a sense of calm as she walked through the doors, her nurse's uniform crisp and clean. She was greeted by Clara, the clinic's head nurse. "Welcome aboard, Emma," Clara said with a friendly smile. "We're excited to have you with us." "Thank you, Clara. I'm looking forward to getting started," Emma replied, feeling a sense of purpose as she prepared for her first day. The work was demanding, but Emma thrived in the environment. She applied the skills she had learned in her training, but it was her natural empathy and dedication that truly set her apart. She formed strong bonds with her patients who appreciated her genuine concern for their well-being. One afternoon, as she was finishing up with a patient, Sam walked into the clinic. He had come by to check on her progress and discuss a new community outreach program they were launching. "How's everything going?" Sam asked, leaning against the counter with a casual ease. "It's going great," Emma said, her face lighting up. "I feel like I'm really making a difference here." "I knew you would," Sam replied. "We're lucky to have you." They discussed the outreach program, which aimed to provide healthcare services to underserved communities. Emma was excited about the initiative, eager to extend her compassion and skills to those who needed it most. As the weeks turned into months, Emma settled into her role at the clinic. Her father's health continued to improve, and he often visited, bringing lunch and sharing stories with the staff. Their life had regained a sense of normalcy, and Emma was filled with a deep sense of contentment. One evening, after a long but fulfilling day at the clinic, Emma sat on her porch, reflecting on her journey. The stars twinkled overhead, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Emma knew that her story was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, but she felt ready to face them, armed with the lessons she had learned and the support of those who loved her. She had discovered a profound truth, that kindness and compassion were not just acts of charity, but sources of strength and resilience. As she gazed at the night sky, a smile spread across her face. She had come through the storm stronger and more determined, and she was ready for whatever came next. Hey everyone, thank you so much for sticking around until the end of this heartwarming story about Emma's journey from hardship to hope. If you found her story as inspiring as I did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Remember, every small act of kindness can ripple out and create a big impact, just like Emma's did. If you enjoyed this content and want to hear more stories of resilience and compassion, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Emma's journey. What part of her story resonated with you the most? Drop a comment below and let's start a conversation. And if you have your own stories of overcoming challenges, feel free to share them too. I might feature them in a future video. Thank you for being part of this amazing community. Your support means the world to me. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and keep spreading the love. See you in the next video.